and I've been brought up here to introduce our participants in tonight's program. We usually just have one up here. Tonight we're going to have three. I'm going to tell you who they are. To get started, when my wife Mary told me that Lucretia Garfield and her great-great-grandson Tim Garfield would be doing tonight's program, I thought, well, that sounds pretty creative. Two people born 120 years apart on the same stage. And then I asked Mary, who's doing the introduction? And she said, you are. So, it's going to be my great pleasure and privilege to introduce our esteemed speakers tonight. First and foremost is our longtime resident from Minter, Ohio. They're dressed in black. The former First Lady herself, Lucretia Garfield. Lucretia was born on a farm just outside of Garrettsville, Ohio. One of four children, she is the firstborn, followed by two brothers and a sister. Lucretia's father, a farmer and a builder, was determined that his children should receive an advanced education. And to that end, he and other community leaders built the Western Reserve Eclectic Institute, known today as Hiram College. Lucretia fell in love with a fellow student, James A. Garfield. They were married in 1858, and they continued to live in Hiram until 1876, when they bought a farm in Minter. During these years, Lucretia's husband's career climbed dramatically, from teacher to principal, state senator, Civil War general, congressman, and in 1880, elected 20th President of the United States. You all know what happened next. Tragically, Lucretia became a widow with 5 children to raise, and she did a remarkable job. They became lawyers, architects, college presidents, state senators, cabinet members, and the list still goes on. When Lucretia's children were grown with families of their own, Lucretia remained busy. After building Longfield's Memorial Wing, she would build a second home in Pasadena, allowing her to live in California in the winter and Ohio in the summer. Next, Tim Garfield. Out of all of Lucretia's living descendants, sorry, I didn't know you were getting home. Okay. Out of all of Lucretia's living descendants, which today number in the hundreds, Tim is the one who carries the family torch. He is the one at Lakeview Cemetery on Memorial Day, giving a speech to hundreds of people gathered in front of the Garfield Mausoleum. He is the Garfield at the Garfield home in Minter, chatting it up with visitors during the site's special events. And when the TV networks need a Garfield for one of their Garfield stories, Tim is the one on TV telling the story to countless viewers. That said, who is Tim Garfield? Tim is a husband, a father, and a grandfather. The fourth of 5 children, he is a graduate of Columbia Military Academy in Tennessee and is retired from the automotive service industry. Today, he lives in Twinsburg with his wife, Carla. He stays involved with Lakeview Cemetery, assisting with their efforts to restore the Garfield Mausoleum. And he was the founder and the executive director of the recently formed Garfield Trail, a non-profit group established to promote the legacy of his final resting place, Lakeview, and his 3 Northeast Ohio homes that are the Northeast Ohio homes that Garfield lived in, located in Walnut Hills, Hiram, and Minter. And now, in addition to Lucretia Garfield and Tim Garfield, we have another Garfield joining us tonight. She's smiling over there. Tim's granddaughter, Lauren Garfield. Lauren is participating tonight as tonight's moderator. The middle child of 3 daughters, Lauren is in her senior year at Stowe Monroe Falls High School, and next year plans to attend Bowling Green State University. Earlier this year, Lauren won the National Speech and Debate Association in storytelling. So raise your hand if you've ever won a national award. Look at all those hands go. Franco, put your hand in. And so, she will be a natural in moderating tonight's program. And with that, let us begin. Come with us as we enter another dimension. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. A journey into a wondrous land of imagination. Next stop, the Garfield Zone. I made that last part up. Fellow members and guests, please welcome Lauren Garfield, Jim Garfield, and Lucretia Garfield.
Thank you for the introduction, Mr. Lintern, and thank you all for coming here tonight as we suspend time. My great-great-great-great-grandmother would be 191 years old today, and with the magic of time travel, her Christmas wish to share a conversation with future Garfield has been granted. They've both given me questions that they'd love to know about each other, and then at the end we'll open the floor to any other questions. So let's get started. In honor of the holiday season that's approaching, what is your favorite Christmas memory as a family?
Shall I go first? I'm so pleased to be here with all of you. My imagination is running wild with this, not only this facility, but the occasion that we all gathered here for. My favorite Christmas memory, I have 2. One was the Christmas of 1880 at our Mentor Farm in Mentor, Lawnfield, as some of you call it. James Garfield had just conducted a front porch campaign, and he was quite worn down. But our family gathered to have Christmas together. And it's very memorable as the only Christmas that my husband spent at the Mentor Farm, as it turns out. The other memory is from 1898, quite a bit later. My children, all grown, 10 grandchildren. We had a celebration in the Memorial Library. We had gifts and a skit put on by the grandchildren based on the war with Spain. So the boys dressed up as Rough Riders. The girls were Red Cross nurses. And they performed a skit with Teddy Roosevelt as the main thing for me, now the grandmother of the household. So those are my 2 fond Christmas memories.
So mine aren't quite as entertaining or creative, I don't think, but we'll run through a few. My father, a name that you'll know well, Lucretia, James R. Garfield II, in a time period towards, I think, the late 80s and early 90s, we had what we used to refer to as Garfield Christmas, about a week to 10 days before Christmas, where he would bring a tree in the house, and we would gather the 5 children and his grandchildren, decorate the tree, and have a wonderful dinner feast together. Because at that point in time, the family was kind of scattered around Northeast Ohio, and getting us together on Christmas Day was a near impossibility. So it was kind of the one time in a year where we managed to get 15 or 20 people together under the same roof.
What were winters like in your beautiful home in South Pasadena?
Oh, some people call me a snowbird. It's a term I'm not that familiar with, but if it means spending half the year in Northeast Ohio and half the year in sunny California, I guess I am a snowbird. The winters were lovely. First of all, palm trees, orange groves, while I'm getting letters from my adult children back east about snowstorms and blizzards. I believe that the climate helped me a great deal. When I was a young girl, I always had lung problems and was sickly in the winter time. So to be in a warmer climate, pardon me, to be in a warmer climate was very, very good for me. People like Theodore Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, came to call and have tea with me. And some of my family would spend part of the winter with me as well.
I don't know about everybody else, but I'd love to have a winter home in California. How did the social life there compare with the one in Washington?
Oh, the social life was quite different. Washington, there's a huge expectation as First Lady and as a congressional wife. There's a social season in Washington, and you're expected to host parties and have delegations come and visit. And I'm more used to being in a library or a parlor. So I relied on Mrs. Harriet Blaine in showing me the ropes of how to conduct a social season in Washington. Pasadena was quite the opposite. It was very casual. There were lots of folks that you may recognize. Anyone know Adolphus Busch of the beer distillery company? He has a beautiful house with lovely gardens. The Rose Parade was just down the street from where I live.
What is your earliest memory of being related to a president?
So that's a difficult question for a variety of reasons. As a child, Brandon will attest to this a little bit from his time and my two nephews. As a child, we were more or less dropped off at lawn field in the fall to do things like rake leaves, pull weeds, and other maintenance items that helped with the house, which kind of was one of the things that first brought, I think, the reality of what my relation was to a president of this country. Probably the second time, and the time that it really registered with me, was when I was in school in Tennessee. And in Tennessee, in the late 60s and 70s, we taught history. We taught American history. And we covered things from the Revolution through World War II and discussions about what was going on in Vietnam and stuff. But midterm, the history teacher looked up and said, "We do have a presidential relative in this room, and he can tell us a little bit about things." At which point I had to go digging and do some research because I really didn't know that much. So that's the first time that the reality of being related to a president came to be. And through time and adulthood, as things went along, as Mr. Lintern said in the introduction, I became kind of the voice and the face of the family when my dad passed away, and then when his cousin Rudolph Garfield began failing more or less. One time at Lakeview Cemetery at the wreath laying ceremony, he almost fell over trying to put the wreath over the rail, and his wife Jennifer looked at me and just said, "It's your turn." And from that day on, it's been my turn, and it's been a privilege, it's been an honor, and it's been an education. So those are kind of the memories that I have of when things finally kind of registered for me.
Although you've both experienced growing up Garfield in different generations, what are some of the joys and burdens of carrying the Garfield name?
Joys and burdens. The newspapermen